Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is, number one, the crypto market. Number two, the NFT market. Number three, the deep bear market, the crypto crashing market. That's what's happening today. So that is what we're going to talk about. Loaded up for discussion. We've got the hard downtrend that crypto has found itself in. ETH, XRP, and Sol are all down more than 10%. We'll be discussing that in a bit. We've got the billionaire Ken Griffin from Citadel is bringing his market-making firm Citadel into crypto, swapping out the retail who have got rinsed in the meme coin casino, bringing in the heavy hitters, it seems. We will discuss that in a bit too. And finally, we've got Ethena raising $100 million from TradFi giants to finance a similar token to USDE to target traditional financial institutions. You know, we're very interested in the stable coin synthetic dollar space. Want to bring some of those details of that deal to you today. We've also got the latest on price action in crypto and NFTs as usual, plus a general discussion on our thoughts on what is going on. I've got Legendary and Rahim on the show with me today. Cannot wait to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, before we do, this market is so risky as we are experiencing today. So please proceed with caution at all times and exercise your own judgment with a little bit or a lot of research, perhaps. That might be helpful. Let's get into it today. Rahim, it's Tuesday. It's the 25th of February. You had a little week off yesterday. How you been? We missed you on the show, my man.
GM, I got my red lighting in today.
There we go. That's why we need it.
It's been good. So good to be back. I literally missed like a week and it just felt like I haven't seen you guys in so long. So even though the markets are bleak, it's dark out there. Happy to be here. And before we get into like all the serious stuff, Legendary, today I was thinking about you because this morning it started drizzling in Dubai.
No way. It can't start raining, not before token again.
For context, for everyone in the audience, last year I was the one who ended up like talking about how this has been the best weather in April I've ever seen in my entire existence. And literally like the next day it rained like cats and dogs. And Legendary always brings that up, that how I was the one who was responsible for it. He essentially kickstarted this meme on Twitter. And yesterday I talked about it again. And like it literally rained right after I tweeted about it.
Yeah, I mean, you became official Minister of Tourism for Dubai for a bit. I think all the responsibility for the weather fell on you for all of the people in Web3 who were visiting for Token 2049 last April. You had to do a lot of, I think you were in like crisis communication mode. You were like the Bybit CEO, but for Dubai. It was like,
wow, that's really, really downplaying what he went through, but I will take it.
People were not happy, man. That's not the selling point for Dubai. It's not supposed to get flooded and rain everywhere. So, but yeah, that's
if you manage to make it rain 2 times in Dubai in a row, 100% hit rate, go to some of the driest places on earth, which are struggling with not getting enough rain, and be like, look, this is my track record. I am Dubai's chief rainmaker. I'm going to charge you $5 million. I'm going to make it rain. It just takes me one post next, and it will happen.
Cool. We need those polymarket bets out there, kind of like really capitalize on this.
I like it. Also thinking the Rainmaker is good. It's just a good name, isn't it? It's a good name. Could that be the nickname for Rahim moving forward? I don't know. I'm still finalizing these nicknames. We gotta solidify some, I think. Legendary, how are things going your side? Market obviously very red. We're going to talk about it in a bit more detail in just a little bit. Thoughts, feelings, any emotions that you are experiencing at the moment?
Yeah, I wrote a post about that yesterday, and I've seen Miles Deutscher writing something similar along those lines, that it feels weird that basically we hit the brakes so hard that within the week, I'm like down from chasing various opportunities and doing things on a very short-term level to being able to explore new ecosystems, to maybe a trade a day, a trade every second day. And like this change of pacing is so weird, because for me, it's the first time that I, third cycle, really managed to lock in those profits at the top of the year. So I'm super happy with, portfolio basically being at all-time high nonetheless, because I'm just in stables essentially, or more than 80%. But it feels very weird to have this like sudden breaking. And I feel like someone in my comments, when I asked like, what's going on with me, I'm thinking about buying a CryptoPunk, was absolutely right. That was the best assessment. Was you are bored, you have nothing to do, you have nothing to chase, you're just bored, and this is where you're thinking what to spend money on. And I think the challenge is going to be to stay disciplined, sit on my hands, and obviously, find the interest that I personally find attractive and do the things I want to do. But I think I went from a transition where I thought the bigger risk is to undertrade, that now the bigger risk is to overtrade. And this mental shift caused a bit of a disconnect in my mind.
Interesting things to unpack there. A few things off the top of my head. One, really cool or good or impressive that you kind of just documented that process, right? Like we've been, we go live every day. We don't share every single detail of portfolio stuff, but we've been talking about stablecoins and stabling up for a long time. And that distinction that you just said is so right, in that, like, going from the risk of undertrading was too high the last few months. Now the risk of overtrading is too high. And I specifically remember the weekend or the day, it might have been back in November or something, where I can't remember what even got into me, but like, I think we had just decided at that point, it might have been when you went to Japan, where you went to Japan and like, we're trading like crazy, despite the fact you were being away. And on the show, we were just actively like, this is the time, guys. Like, if you want to make a move, you want to place a bet, you want to make something happen. Like, if you're going to do it now. That was our feeling then. And then obviously around inauguration, kind of initial instincts about that being the top, or a local top at least, was probably right. And given the mania, particularly in AI agents and things like that, I think it was pretty nicely played, pretty responsibly played, pretty thoughtfully played. I think in general, as a show, we've been like fairly responsible, and that means we're able to be here and laugh and joke about it and be okay. So I hope that's been helpful to people, just like hearing our thoughts as we go through it. We obviously don't know things perfectly and haven't nailed every single thing, but like in general, I think we've been directionally pretty good. So that's interesting. Rahim, be curious to hear your thoughts, dealing maybe some of that emotional aspect of it, how you found the transition from doing a lot to doing less. Is that how you see it? Because I know you've been very, very big and successful in the meme coin side of things. So how are you assessing it at the moment?
I think Legendary like beautifully articulated it, by the way. I absolutely loved it the way you said it. I saw it when you tweeted about it. And I think I've been kind of in the same boat. It's kind of been like easier and less FOMO for me, because I've been like busy with like some other stuff that I'm working on and building on in Dubai at the moment, and it has kept me busy for the last like couple of weeks. So it feels like it came at perfect time for me. I'm very much at peace. I feel like now I'm coming from a huge place of like knowledge and education. So I think, yeah, it's been crazy to see some of these numbers for sure, but like having stabled up a lot, taking that step back and realizing that, okay, at some point you can be like risking so much. It's been a good learning, and yeah, like touch wood, I've been like in a more peaceful place than I would have imagined to be.
I like it. Well, that's super positive. Just a message to the people who may not be in that place. I know, just because we talk about it doesn't mean that everyone is in that place. A, feel for you a bit. B, we've been there. Like, I think, this is my second cycle, Legendary's third. Right, I'm not sure your number, but like, no one gets it right all the time. And, the biggest thing in this game is survival, I think, or at least the core component is, if you can just survive, your numbers basically go up each cycle, like irrespective. And you can take kind of less risk over time, surviving. So as long as you're here and you're in the game, I think that's good. Sure, we're going to go into a more difficult period now, and you might not be able to make the gains that you think that you should have made in the last few weeks. Like, forcing it, I don't think is the thing to do. But survive, be patient, and I think it's going to be okay. If you're in a not so great position, there are other people in the same position / people have been there before. So, survive, thrive, adapt. It's going to be okay. Let's get into the main stuff today to get you up to speed with everything that's happening in the news so that you can make the best decisions and have some good thoughts on it. Here's ours, starting with Bitcoin as usual, down 6%, broke 90 for the first time in a long while, sitting at around 89k, down 6%. ETH down double digits, down 10% to 2.4k, went as low as 2.3 something, but it's bounced just a bit above. XRP down 11% to 2.2, BNB down 4% to 613, Solana down 11%, double digits as well, to 141. Getting into the meme coin side of things, let's see what the damage is here. I haven't actually looked at this yet, so let's see what the damage is. Dogecoin down 10%, Pepe down 11, Trump down 12, Bonk down 11, SPX down 10, WIF down 12, Pengu down 10, AI16Z down a couple. Given that majors are down 10, it's not that bad for memes to go down 10. I remember I used to make this point quite a while ago when memes were showing like insane strength relative to other stuff, maybe kind of suggests they could be getting towards a bottom area. Although the main point I've been making recently is these things just keep legging down. It's like, remember NFTs? Everyone always kept thinking that because it was so high, it's going to be undervalued versus that high value, and it doesn't always work out that way. So mostly around double digits down, which only feels slightly better because majors are also double digits down, but I guess it's still painful to hold. AXBT down 5. So yeah, that's the situation there on that side. Getting into the main headlines themselves, as we mentioned, we have crypto being hit very hard. We're going to be discussing that in more detail as ETH, XRP, and Solar all down more than 10%. We've got billionaire Ken Griffin to bring his market-making firm Citadel into the crypto arena. So we will be diving into that, what that means. And then also Ethena raising the $100 million from TradFi giants to finance a similar token to USDE. Very interested in that. Legendary, that is the main stuff. What's going on in the NFT market? Is there any respite, or is things just as red in general?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, very nice crypto punk flip. I think it was with Punk's OTC, which he bought a couple months ago, sold it for 52.5 ETH. The one I'm sharing on screen, up 4 or 5 ETH on that flip alone. Other than that, NFTs actually follow what you just had said on the meme price action. Yes, they are down, but they're not down as much as ETH is down. Bored Apes are down 7%, sliding under the 13 ETH floor, sitting at 12.9 ETH. Pudgy Penguins, very similar story, down 7%, 8.49 ETH floor. Very similar story again for the Miladies, down 5%, 3.63 ETH floor. Doodles are the same, down 6%, 3.5 ETH floor. And Azukis are a bit more stable, down only 2% at a 2.84 ETH floor.
Good stuff. Thanks for that summary. Getting into the Web3 Roundup to get you up to speed with everything else happening around the space. SEC closes investigation into Robinhood. This is on the back of the SEC closing the investigation into Coinbase too. So there's a bunch of other positive regulatory catalysts going on at the moment. It's just there was also simultaneously some of the most ridiculous on-chain behavior that we've ever seen. So I think it's important to point that out. There's some positive regulatory stuff going on. Maybe we just need to cool off more generally. OKX settles the DOJ investigation with an $84 million fine and $421 million in restitution. So again, some conclusions being come to in the justice system. Strategy, Michael Saylor buys another 20,000 Bitcoin at 97K before Bitcoin tumbled yesterday. MetaMask have teased their MasterCard coming soon. And finally, Yuga Labs announced Dookie Dash game will sunset at the end of February. Okay, that is the Web3 Roundup. Those are the main headlines. Before we get into the bigger discussion on the crash and Ethena and the Citadel news, which I think is all very important, anything catching your attention from the rest of the Roundup, boys? Maybe Legendary first, then Ryan.
The only thing I'd pick out is the SEC closing those investigations. They closed Coinbase, OpenSea, now Robinhood. It seems like they're going one by one, closing all of the major investigations that were still open. So that is obviously a very positive sign and good to see.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the thing to double click on at the moment, right? Whereas there's so much misery and so much downward pressure on the price. But there are these like really positive catalysts happening. However, the point that I made in a tweet earlier is that it's going to take time for people to capitalize on that. Like that's not, whilst it is bullish, there's not like businesses that can completely capitalize on the fact that they are no longer being prosecuted in the way. You know, I'm sure I'm aware actually of a bunch of firms moving back to the States, for example, because they thought this administration is going to be less, they're going to be less attacking the crypto industry. And that is the case, but it's going to take time before those positive things happen. So it can't necessarily counteract the extreme negative price action, which is, I think, coming about at least in part because of the most ridiculous on-chain behavior that we've witnessed in the last month and a half in the meme coin casino and the internet capital markets. Rahim, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think just seeing a more positive outlook on like a more institutional thing obviously doesn't change anything short term. I think this kind of goes back to your tweet that you made yesterday, I believe, of this morning, which is, yeah, we might not have any like short term catalysts, but like long term, like things are looking not that bad. You have a lot of like regulatory ecosystems that are working in our favor. So yeah, whilst it doesn't bring anything like positively right now, I think just like clearing up all of this useless stuff that has happened in the last like 2-3 years, it's kind of nice to see that, kind of brings hope to the tech side of it. Like, forget the speculation of it, but it brings more value to the tech that we've built and the value of decentralization and crypto as a whole.
Yeah, fair points. Legendary, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, in terms of other positive news, something I've also observed wasn't part of the snapshot, but I thought it was notable, was Bybit actually paying back one of their loans that they took out from BitGet, 40,000 ETH loan, 107 mil when they took it out, 99 mil when they paid it back. And from what we have seen on chain and from what we've seen how Bybit and BitGet interacted with one another, it seems there was no collateral that was posted, and it seems that no interest has been paid with that. Obviously, we don't know if there's like a separate transaction for that or if there's like a backroom deal going on for that. But just from the on-chain action, it's pretty cool to see how fast they paid that back, and if it's really true, which Bybit has interacted with and hasn't like contradicted that or those claims. It's pretty nice to be supported in such a way to get a quick 100 mil loan within a couple hours, pay that back, and presumably not have to post collateral for that or not pay interest on it. Obviously, we've spoken about it yesterday. It's, I think, in every major centralized exchange interest to clear the air as quickly as possible to protect themselves from losing customer funds. But nonetheless, I think that wouldn't have happened in every industry. So I wanted to point that out.
I like it. What a way to make the money that you need quickly by liquidating absolutely everyone on a move down. Nice way to get some of the cash back, I think. Okay, so I actually put this tweet out yesterday as well, talking about my thoughts on where things go from here. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Like I said thoughts on next moves. I think we go into a long period of ranging, to be honest, or maybe even go lower as Trump and co take a wrecking ball to a lot of existing relationships, internal and external. When I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about Doge. I'm thinking about all of the impacts that's going to have on working people in America. I think it's going to not allow a lot. It's going to be probably bad for the economy because there's going to be all these people who can't spend in the way that they were before. I don't think he's very incentivized to make and then more kind of zooming slightly further out, I said, I don't think he's very incentivized to make the market rip right now. The Trump pump has already happened, guys. That was my opinion. It's been my opinion for a while. I was just like articulating it yesterday. If you missed that, you missed it. It was a huge move, right? Bitcoin went from 60 to 108 and then settled in the 100 regions. Now it's kind of playing around there. Solana has obviously completely exploded from its lows in the previous bear market to as high as almost $300 was part of the Trump meme coin. So that move, the meat of that move is done at a minimum. The next one, in my opinion, or just how I'm thinking about it when I'm zooming out, is not scheduled until the next election, or starting obviously a couple of years before that, because it needs to have an impact. So in order to have a meaningful effect on the next election, is going to start before that. I'm keeping my eye on all of these states who are knocking back Bitcoin bills. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. We touched on it recently. I think it was it Montana, or maybe I'm just going to make up a bunch of names here. Montana. I think there's at least 3 states that have knocked back the Bitcoin bills. Remember, we always report that as like super bullish news, like, yep, they're gonna do it. But no, they're not doing it. There's a few that have knocked it back already. Sure that there are others who are meant to be moving it forward, but all of that stuff is going to take more time too. So it's not like suddenly the states are going to be stacking Bitcoin in the next month. I'm also open to black swan events, actually. Like, I think it's been a while since we've had a really black swan event, and just 2 that I mentioned here is that, you know, there's the increasing international tensions that are going on. Also intrigued by the insurance market, which I think is aggressively exposed to certain assets which are causing huge losses. Commercial real estate also is in a really crazy precarious position, which everyone wants to ignore and has been ignoring for multiple years now. So I just think there are a bunch of things that have been weighing down, or like potentially weighing down on price action from a more zoomed out perspective. And then obviously you had the crazy mania that we've had specifically in crypto, where people's like, that just can't continue. That can only go on for so long. So those are some of my thoughts I wrote down yesterday. Would be curious for your guys' thoughts. Ledge, Rahim, what do you think before we get into the main stuff?
Yeah, the first thing on that is that I also want to take a look at the stock market. Just looking at the S&P 500, that is at all-time high. I know, like, we very much like to stay within our bubble, but basically adding to that, to, you know, people who say, oh, bull market hasn't even started yet, etc., etc., equities are at all-time high. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I basically agree with you that market's kind of waiting for a new catalyst. The thing that I probably don't agree with 100% is that's going to take until potentially the next election, or at least midterm elections, or leading up to those. But more so, yes, a couple states, you know, have said no to the Bitcoin bill, but I think there's 33 states where they're still in discussion. And there's also other governments. We had Abu Dhabi buying 400 mil worth of BTC in the first quarter alone.
True.
So I do think that there's still like other nation states, as well as states in the US, who, once they would make that move towards a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that could be a nice catalyst for the market once it actualizes itself and we see real money flowing into those states, nation states, or other sorts of like really relevant institutions. So that would be another catalyst that I have in mind. But apart from that, I very much agree with everything you had posted in that tweet.
Like it. Interesting thoughts. And just to be clear, when I've kind of round off the point by saying, so positioned sufficiently in cash post the crazy mania, which I think is important. But that tweet is always in my head, where it's like, you've got to be allocated to the industry that you are logging in every day on. So like equally allocated to a sufficient amount in the majors, which I am most bullish on, which at the moment is Bitcoin, isn't it? That is how my portfolio is probably adjusted. Still can't bring myself to get rid of like some of the extra bits of ETH. I have downsized recently, but I just think it's useful. I think it can still be useful. Let's see. Ryan, want to hear your thoughts, but just to bring in Funky as well. Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on our kind of general market direction and considerations here on crypto?
GM guys, yeah, I mean, I think it's really well thought out. In fact, I saw a post this morning from Andrew, who's down in the audience listening. He had a really great take about how, you know, that was it. That was the bull market. I don't know if I necessarily agree. When you look at past cycles like February, March, like you think back in 21, it was very similar. You had a rip from December, January, then it kind of cooled off, and then a rip again into April. So I think it's still on the table. You got to take into account that China just printed a ton of money, a ton.
Yes.
Like we did during COVID, right? So like the liquidity is now starting to enter the markets. I think maybe whether or not we reduce rates and start turning on the money printer big time really depends on, to your points, if we get some kind of black swan, even a smaller one where equities take a big hit, Trump is not going to sit by and let that happen. And then to the point about the states and the Bitcoin reserves, Florida is going to really, really do something big here. My friend Sam, who's the president of the FBBA, he just posted yesterday a picture with Joe Gruters, who's a very important state senator. He is going to be the next CFO probably for the state of Florida, we have billions of dollars to deploy. They've openly talked about, and he's the one who's championing in the Senate side the Bitcoin reserve bill. So it will be a done deal in Florida. The session starts this week. So I would not be surprised to see that kind of play out during the session. That will close up probably in early May. And then maybe they start buying in the summer for all we know. So I think, I'm kind of more on legendary side. And I think that there's still a number of catalysts. I don't think it's as far away as the next election. But, I think we're in for a bumpy ride. But, if you're, sitting in BTC, you're really not all that worried about it in the grand scheme of things. And shout out to that dude who actually wrapped the two crypto punks and then just took all the stables and 3.5x leverage on Hyperliquid and shorted the market. So good for him. He's clearly up.
Good move indeed. Yeah. The only thing that I wanted to add to that is because I feel like a lot of people have seen that hockey stick chart with China printing on the M1 money supply, which is not perfectly accurate, because what in reality had happened is that the People's Bank of China, which is the central bank, has decided to change the definition of the M1 money supply back in December, and becoming the new way to calculate it in 2025 by including residential demand deposits, as well as prepaid funds received by non-bank payment institutions. It was actually including that into the M1 money supply that made most of the hockey stick, and not them actually printing a shit ton of money. They just changed the statistical measure of how they calculate money supply.
Interesting. Excellent clarification. Rahim, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, I think you guys have summed it up really eloquently. I think this brings me back to a tweet I believe DC Investor made almost a year ago. And he was essentially talking about, this is right after the ETFs had been approved. And he was just talking about that if you guys are essentially looking for bull circles or bear circles through a consumer point of view, or on Twitter, or this app is the number one app, you're completely mistaken, because the next cycle will be essentially dictated by institutions and governments, and they will have big swings that you might not even realize that, okay, you have a massive dip. Where did this dip come from? Or the other way around and stuff. And I thought it was a very interesting tweet. And I think the more time passes by, just going back to even your particular tweet, you look at the SEC news is pretty positive. The Bitcoin strategic reserve conversation is still strong. Going back to Legendary talking about the Abu Dhabi thing, you look at all of this and it doesn't seem so bleak. However, when you go on Twitter, it feels I know we're back to FTX levels. And that just talks about I just don't think the cycle would be very much based on retail coming in, and that's going to decide our crypto value. Perhaps I love the Feds and stuff. But yeah, I just think things are fundamentally different this time. And it would be just crazy to not observe more institutional and government moves up and down and see what that does to the market.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all pretty valid, to be honest. Interesting stuff. Great discussion. Probably continue it a little bit more as we kind of just give some of the numbers as part of the headlines in a minute. Remember, we're going to continue talking about this huge downtrend that crypto has hit, with the majors being down more than 10%. Some of them. We're also going to be talking about Ken Griffin and his firm Citadel entering into the crypto arena as a market maker. Then also Ethena raising $100 million to build out a slightly different stablecoin as part of its offering. But before we get there, let's hit our Polkadot explorations segment with our partner Polkadot today. Legendary, take us into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Nova Wallet is a popular mobile wallet for Polkadot with more than 100,000 users and over 300 million worth of staked assets via Nova. And you can use it on your mobile phone. The app supports over 100 networks and offers a pretty wide range of features. There's in particular four main features that we find pretty cool. With the first of it being asset management. You can basically on-ramp fiat, buy, swap, send tokens around. You can do that across the rollups within the ecosystem, going from the Polkadot Asset Hub to Mythos Chain in one singular transaction. Second, you can use all the dApps on the mobile browser, including both what is built on the Polkadot JS ecosystem as well as MetaMask protocols specifically. Third, you can stake both DOT and Kusama with as little as one DOT, and Nova charges 0 fees and commissions for that. And fourth, you can exercise your government's rights. Because Nova supports OpenGov. That means you can do all the referendums, delegate your votes, contribute towards crowd loans. And there's also a bunch of other cool things that are coming to keep your eye on. There's some in particular that I liked, including the Nova debit card, which is planned for Q2 2025, and also the support of multi-sig wallets in Q3. If you want to take a look at the wallet yourself, I'm going to put the official website and X account in the comment section.
Love it. Thanks so much, Legendary. We'll be continuing to explore on Polkadot as we go through the weeks and the next quarter. Absolutely love it. Right, let's get into.
We have to go to Funky because he has his hand up on that, and he's not only our political expert in resonance, but also the Polkadot expert in resonance.
Go for it.
No, just real quick. Yeah, Nova Wallet is absolutely fantastic. It's a great mobile wallet. All those things that you talked about make it just so slick to use. There have been times where I can't do stuff on like the regular JS portal, which is the main dev console, and I can still do it on Nova Wallet, like just transferring assets and stuff like that. So they are heads down building, really great team. And just kind of a little alpha leak. It's going to be released. There's going to be an announcement in East Denver. They're releasing what's called the Polkadot app, which is built by Novasama Wallet Technologies. And basically it will allow you to use DOT and stables to just buy regular everyday things. It's like a super streamlined, simplified wallet where you just type in the USD amount. Let's say you're at Starbucks. And what it's doing on the back end is it creates a gift card, and then you show that to the barista or whatever, and you scan it, and bam, and it shows it in the USD amount, so you don't have to worry about how many DOT. And it just does all the conversion, and all the back end magic is done through Nova. They are an incredible team, and keep an eye out for that Polkadot app to come soon.
Love it. Thanks for the extra alpha, Funky, as usual. Right, let's keep it moving. Got a bunch of important headlines to hit now. Rahim, crypto is obviously hit hard. We've had some general discussions so far. Why don't you just put it into context for us? Give us some numbers that you're looking at that you're finding interesting. What are you thinking about here?
Awesome. Just piggybacking off of the entire conversation we've been having on the show so far. So we've had about like $350 billion liquidated since Friday. Massive numbers. They've been like read across the board. We were obviously seeing your 10 to 15% downtrends in like AI coins, alts, and memes. But we saw this happen with majors in like the last 24 hours. As you guys can see on the screen, there was like a particular hour where we had about like $100 billion liquidated in an hour. And those numbers are absolutely like staggering to think about. Of course, it's been hard for the entire industry to kind of like pinpoint or what exactly happened. From what we observe is it's a snowball effect of a bunch of things coming across. We obviously had the Bybit hack that happened that we talked about yesterday on the show, earlier in the space as well. We had the small freak out with the China variant on like the coronavirus, which kind of like dipped their market, had like a small dip in the S&P 500, which again attributed to Bitcoin going down. You obviously have had a weird sentiment on the Solana side of things with like all the meme coin fiasco that has been going around with Argentina, with the Trump coin. We also have on the 1st of March, I believe, one of the biggest unlocks for Solana, where about like $2 billion worth of unlocks are happening. So it kind of like bleeds into the Solana price action, which has been absolutely brutal. If you think about it, during the whole Trump mania, Solana was trading at like about $289 to $90. You look at it now, it's been 140, so it's almost down 50%. Those numbers are pretty notable to think about. Then you obviously have everything. Elon Musk and his whole Doge department is on this like cleansing spree, right? Like where they want to remove government spending, fire like a bunch of people. A lot of economists have been talking about that. We actually haven't seen the inflation data, the job data from actually Trump's administration. All the data that we got in January was still actually from everything that the Biden administration has done. So again, like, you know, there have been like various reports of like the likelihood of like a rate cut happening in March has gone down significantly even more. So I feel like there are like a bunch of factors bleeding into everything that's happening right now. It's kind of so interesting to think about that, because I remember this very exact day last year, I was in NFT Paris, and that's where we had one of the biggest like pumps. Like memes were absolutely blowing up. You had like alts running up and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see a year down the line how different things are. But like what seems like it's a mixture of things. We obviously we're on the verge of like seeing some sort of like a black swan event with the Bybit hack. But I think the way it was handled has been like super amazing to see that. So it's a bunch of factors happening at the same time, and we are hoping one day by one day we're going to figure this out. But yeah, that's kind of like the roundup of why the markets are red to what they are.
Appreciate it, man. That's a really helpful helpful collection of helpful selection of important factors for why things are going the way that they're going at the moment. We have obviously discussed that in a reasonable amount of detail already, but I'm just wondering then, maybe looking forward, Legendary, looking back for a second and then looking forward, out of those factors, Legendary, what are you most concerned about, if anything? What's the maybe short to medium term turning point that you might be looking for? You said your position now is like, right, the challenge now is to avoid, which way around is it? To avoid over trading now, because you want to step back a touch. What would be the things that you need to see to change it, or do you not think that's going to happen?
The biggest thing that I would worry about is probably the US economy and seeing how that does over the year. That's probably the major thing for me to look at, because this is going to impact all other things. In terms of what it means for me and what catalysts I'm looking for, I'm still very happy to mostly sit in stables. Of course, do a couple trades, as I said, here and there. Definitely a skill set I want to pick up a bit more is now to try to also short the market sometimes when I think we have a directional change coming. When I said I'm going to sell my Solana, I could have also been short in that position and benefited or gained on that. In terms of catalyst, it's still the strategic Bitcoin reserve, both from the US as well as potentially other countries, that I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm not in any rush to like make a major move back into the market at just this point in time yet.
Yeah, I agree. You said a variety of things there. The two things I'm looking at is rates. Are rates going to come down anytime soon? And what are the Bitcoin catalysts? Like, how is the Bitcoin conversation going to be moved forward? Because if Bitcoin goes weaker, I fear for the rest of the market. And I think, as you said, Ryan, you made an interesting point, right? Like the discrepancy between corporate perspectives at the moment, who I think are completely oblivious to some of the nonsense that's going on in more retail circles and in crypto Twitter circles, which is driving a lot of the sentiment on our timeline. But from the corporate perspective, like, it's going fine. If Bitcoin could get weaker, but I don't necessarily think that's going to shake out a lot of people's conviction in Bitcoin who are coming from the more institutional level. So Bitcoin going down to 70 or 80 would not be that bad for people in Bitcoin, I don't think. But it would be catastrophic, I suspect, for people who are not in Bitcoin or in other assets that they are hoping to go, which would go up with Bitcoin. So I'm watching Bitcoin quite closely. I'm watching these strategic reserve conversations. One thought that I had, I don't know, this is a bit of a tin hat one, but I kind of like to think this way sometimes. One thought that I had is like, why would, and I appreciate Funky, you mentioned Florida earlier, and Florida is always kind of branching out, doing their own thing quite a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if they managed to go forward, but I also wouldn't be surprised if, say, if you take the Trump administration at face value, and you think that they are moving in the direction of buying crypto and holding Bitcoin, and that is the direction of travel in the US, wouldn't be surprised if they're leaning on people to say, guys, you're not going to front run us. Like, you can't just go and front run the government. We're going to take some time to get this stuff going. No, each state should not be able to necessarily front run us. Like, I feel like if you were the most powerful person in the country and the world, i.e. the president and the team surrounding him, they don't want to buy Bitcoin after every state has filled up their coffers first, right? That feels like an obvious thing. I wouldn't feel very good being the person buying after every single state has done that before me. And I would want to prevent that in some way. So look, I don't know. That's just me thinking out loud. I'm watching the conversation. I'm slightly skeptical of the conversation. I do think it's the direction of travel we're going in, but it's kind of odd, right? Because people just don't want to get front run. And I'm sure there's going to be some smart things being done to make sure that people don't have to buy. Important people who want to buy won't have to buy at some ridiculous thing that's going to make them look really bad. Like, that's just not going to be an option, in my opinion. Funky, your hand is raised. I know you brought up Florida. What do you think of my tinfoil hat thinking here, Funky? What's the idea?
I think it's very tinfoil. I check out the post. I did link Sam's post below so you could read it, because what he argues is that what's going to happen in Florida. And remember, Trump's entire transition team came from Florida. It's a bunch of Florida boys and a couple ladies right up in there. So when you think about that, and I don't think the United States worries about being front run by anybody, right? I mean, this is the biggest capital market in the world. They have more money than they know what to do with, because they just keep printing it. I don't think they're worried about states front running them. They can't buy in the same kind of size if they wanted to. And just to kind of comment on the bigger time, like, as someone who works for an enterprise grade infrastructure provider, we are bullish. No one really cares about what the current price is, right? There is so much fundamentally changing because of the political structure that's happening. We're going to see regulatory clarity. Look at the way the SEC has already been backing off the suits, like you already mentioned earlier in the show. I think anybody who's really thinking long term and is not a typical CT goon who's like, oh my God, my coins are crashing, right? If you're just a long term minded person, you know where this is all going. And I feel like this is only a very positive environment. Price action, yes, dictates a lot of emotions on CT, but CT is not what's important. CT is not who's moving the needle. It's these big countries. It's everybody else. And shout out Kooks here. So,
yeah, sounds. I think that's fair. Look, I'm putting that idea there. I appreciate the pushback. I think that's helpful to have out loud. Interesting stuff. Let's keep it moving, though. We got to get into the next headline. Legendary, you want to talk about Ken Griffin, Citadel coming in? We've spoken about how sentiment on retail is crushed, but some of these bigger players are coming in. So what do we need to know?
I do, because it's a pretty important news. So let's hope that my voice is going to carry me through it. It is important because Citadel Securities is so significant as a firm. They are processing $503 billion in daily trades. That accounts for nearly 35% of all US stock trading volume. Just to give you a picture of the size of that company. Once more, it's Citadel Securities. It's not the hedge fund that is getting into this. And they are looking to become a liquidity provider for cryptocurrencies. And that's very interesting because it kind of signals a change of heart by Ken Griffin, the founder of it, who's been pretty skeptical of cryptocurrencies. Back in a 2021 Bloomberg interview, he called them a jihadist call. He kind of pedaled back on that in 2022, said he was wrong about that, wanted actually back then already to engage with cryptocurrencies in a market-making capacity or have a trading platform. Then, however, the FTX crash happened, pulled out of that, and now he is back. He said it at the UBS conference that he wants to get into the market-making side of things, in particular for major exchanges such as Coinbase, Binance, Crypto.com, with the focus being of setting up the market-making teams outside of the US, and not specifically mentioning which countries he is looking for that. But I think the interesting thing here was that non-US focus for the setup. I think if that move is going to happen, it's going to be significant because the amount of liquidity, the amount of experience that Citadel would bring to this market, for the better or worse, would have a massive, massive impact. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that they kind of planned those moves, announced those moves, have been like playing with a thought for a couple of years. So it will be interesting to see in what way they will now eventually move into crypto. The thing that could be a result of that is obviously massively increased liquidity. We just on the last news had this question of, is liquidity drying up in crypto? Obviously, a market maker like Citadel would bring a lot of liquidity to the market, potentially also making like the spreads a bit tighter and take volatility out. But on the other hand, their interest is obviously as a market maker in processing as much volume as they can. So they do like a certain amount of volatility as well, because this is what makes their business go very, very successfully. Additional potential implications, depending how big that move is and how much liquidity they want to provide, they could very well centralize even some of the majors if they take such a big role in that. If you had a look at what Wintermute has been doing, both exploring meme coins, but also alts, they took such significant positions that they were not only market making, but also market moving with them, especially as people were tracking those wallets. But on the positive side of that, if you want to make that argument, the trust that that institution would add by having such a surplus of liquidity could yet again make it more interesting for some of the big institutional players to get in. So I think the key takeaway here is Citadel Securities, really, really massive firm, really experienced in market making securities processing, again, more than a third of stock trading volume in the US alone. Have been kind of playing around with that thought for quite a while, seems to become more concrete now, and definitely very important and significant to watch how their entry into the market will play out.
Yeah, excellent summary. The key thing for me, I guess this is the simplified way to look at it, is these guys are attracted to, I think you mentioned volatility. Some volatility is helpful to them. That's maybe helps them with profitability, but also they're just attracted to volume, right? So the fact that they have assessed the situation, maybe were not as pro crypto before, but now they are. If I'm reading this right, Legendary, and taking your information correctly, this is a bet that crypto volume goes up over time. That is the reason why to move into this market. So it's an expression from some of the smartest, biggest, one of the smartest, biggest firms, that we think volume in this industry goes up over time. Therefore, we want exposure to that because there will be more money in that in the future.
Yeah, and just that is very fair. And just a reminder on the stats on that, that the major crypto exchanges, the centralized one, processed 18.8 trillion US dollars in 2024, just in spot trading volume. That's not derivatives trading, that's just spot trading.
And to be honest, part of the conversation, or one of the learnings that came out of the Bybit situation, was everyone like, okay, cool, it seems like they've dealt with it, not bad, blah, 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 blah. But also in the same breath, it was like, what do you guys mean you just got all the money? Like they basically like 1.4 bill is the biggest heist ever, the biggest hack ever. And there's like, guys, don't worry. I mean, I think they did end up taking loans, so I'm not sure how their messaging lined up with like the reality. But they were basically saying, we've got the cash. Like, we've got the cash. And I think these centralized exchanges have been absolutely printing in general. And that whole business model is incredibly, incredibly profitable. So yes, we will see more institutional players enter into it to get a slice, in the same way we talk about stablecoins being a tremendous business, and more people are going to enter that because Tether are not going to make those supernormal profits forever. And in the same way, on the centralized exchange side, on the market making side, it's going to get more competitive as people realize that, hang on a sec, how much are you guys making every day, every week, every month? So I think that is great, a fair assessment of the situation. Glad we're able to just highlight that for you guys. Unless there are any further thoughts, let me try and just hit the Ethena news on the head in the last few minutes, just to get you up to speed with what is going on there. I always think what's going on with Ethena is super interesting because it is one of the biggest winners of this cycle. Not a stable coin, call it a synthetic dollar, $7 billion coin. Clearly one of the bigger winners of the cycle. But just to get you up to speed, they've just raised $100 million, or it was announced, reported that they raised $100 million from TradFi giants to finance a similar token to USDE to target traditional financial institutions. Some of the people they raised from, it came via a private sale of Ethena tokens, which is their token, from investors including Franklin Templeton, Polychain, Pantera, Dragonfly, and F Prime. The funds are going to be used to build out its new Ethena chain. So the Ethena chain is a thing that is happening, and the support to support the launch of its institutional product, according to a source familiar with the matter. So Just in terms of the details, they say the article reported that the Ethena tokens were sold at an average price of just under 40 cents. So this was a private sale of locked tokens to these entities. Ethena is currently trading now at around that price, but at the time when this deal took place in December, it was much higher, which shows, talking about volatility, the crazy volatility in the industry. You think you're doing an OTC deal at a valuable price, and then suddenly a month and a half later, the price that you bought at is the current price. Anyway, they say the funds will be used to support the building out of the new chain and its broader ecosystem, as well as the upcoming launch of its institutional product, which is IUSDE. So to explain what that is and how that works a little bit more, IUSDE is identical to the staked version of USDE, which is a rewards token users receive when staking their USDE on Ethena. The token, which is geared towards institutions, employs a wrapper mechanism that can program transfer restrictions so that it can be held and used by traditional financial entities subject to regulatory oversight. So, the way that it works is that the USDE, which can only be redeemed and minted by whitelisted users, maintains its peg to the dollar primarily through a crypto carry trade. In short, just a quick summary of it is that Ethena deploys an arbitrary strategy between the spot and future prices of ETH based on the theory that the prices typically converge as futures contracts approach. So they're trying to make an institutional version of the synthetic dollar, which captures the carry trade. And I think that is going to be quite attractive to people. We've spoken about stablecoins a lot. We've spoken about Ethena's entry into that market. They're now a $6 billion $6 billion TVL as a stablecoin. I believe they're in third place now, behind USDC and USDT, which is by far and away the largest. But trying to access the traditional market should be a quite impressive unlock for them. So that is the game for them, I think. And we're watching that closely, especially because we're slightly more in stables these days. So I guess maybe a final question as we round things out. Legendary, I know you've always been a bit more skeptical on anything when it comes to stablecoins. You're wanting to be safe, and Rahim will be curious to hear your thoughts on how you think about stables as well. How do you feel about like the more institutional offering versus how you even think about stables more generally at the moment? Like, what's your kind of thought process?
Yeah, I feel like Ethena is one of the very, very few points where we take a pretty different point of view. You and I still have zero exposure to that ecosystem, but because I don't think it's cool what they're building, and obviously having this institutional support now is massive and a pretty strong sign of trust. But just from my personal perspective, I'm extremely conservative with my stables. I did start earning a bit more yield on both my USDC and USDT. It's just that those have been around for a longer period of time and not synthetic, or not trying to basically use the carry trade to maintain the peg. So this is primarily the only reason why I'm kind of staying out of that ecosystem, because for my personal risk profile, it's not worth to chase that extra yield that I can get in Ethena versus my quote unquote more traditional stable holdings. But nonetheless, I think that institutional adoption, and if they go through with building the institutional version of that, could be something that could potentially change my mind.
Fair enough. I think that's okay. The reason why, maybe I just have I kind of like the idea of exploring with stable coins. This is, again, a personal thing. I think there's going to be even more mixes of stable coins moving forward. So I liked what they were doing, but I've also taken a bit of heart from the fact that there've been quite significant drawdowns in general. And the USDE price has almost always maintained its peg. It hasn't always. There has been occasions where it's slightly dipped, but in general, it's been pretty strong. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be okay. As Legendary said, it's good to articulate those risks. They do exist. It is not a precise stablecoin. It is just a synthetic dollar. But I've taken quite a lot of heart from how the coin has maintained its peg, and B, just watching the team execute. I think they've done a great job. So, you can just take our viewpoints and decide for yourself. Rahim, curious to hear your thoughts before we close out. How are you kind of approaching this? Do you have a view on Ethena itself? What is your view on stablecoin mixes at the moment, as people might be thinking like, right, I've stabled up a lot. What can I do? How should I think about it?
It's a couple of weeks ago, and it's something I still haven't gotten down to. I wrote down in my notebook that I actually want to look into the opportunities that essentially are in actually investing in ETFs, just because like they kind of play like this whole carry trade thing all the time. It's like a traditional finance thing, right? And it was something I had written down. I'm not like very educated on it, on like the TradFi side of it, but like I know enough about it. I was like, okay, clearly, like, you would have like massive inflows and massive outflows, but they're doing it with obviously a specific strategy. I Knowing that like Ethena is doing something like this with their stablecoin, I think piques my interest a lot, because I was like figuring out what the hurdle for me with the ETFs would be, considering it's like a US commodity, and like, what will be the process for me to get involved in it and stuff. But I really like this. So I had been wanting to get into it, at least like from an education point of view, but I'm actually like pretty intrigued and stuff. I'm actually going to look into it and deploy some, because I want to experiment with it. So I think it's an interesting strategy.
What I'll send you to have a look at as well then, Rahim, since we're talking about it, and I don't know, maybe I'll share this for everyone else. Well, you can go to my profile and find it if you need to, if you're intrigued by what I'm about to say. But if you're looking for like USDE related exposure, we just mentioned they're building out the Ethena chain, and there's also going to be the first DEX, which is getting built as we speak. It's called Ethereal. I wrote a piece on it maybe like a week ago when it had around 50 million TVL. It's just gone past 400 million TVL. And I just sent a bunch of USDE into the void, just send it in, the deposit style, start earning points, probably get a token at some point. Didn't think about it too much, but I thought, okay, Ethena is huge. They've done a great job so far. They're building out the chain. This is the first DEX. Provide something there. So maybe that can be part of it. I'll send that to you after. If anyone else is interested in that, I wrote a piece on it it was about a week ago on my profile, so you can find that pretty easily. Don't have time to share it here now because that's the end of the show. Apologies, we ran just a touch over. I hope you enjoyed it and hope that you're doing okay. It's been a tough market in the last few days. We will be here when we're up. We'll be here when we're down. I think in general, the last couple months, we've probably called stuff fairly well and quite responsibly. So I hope that has been helpful to people. And even if it hasn't, know that we've been there ourselves. We've all done stupid things with some of this crypto capital. The best thing is to learn. The best thing is to survive. And we live another day. We'll keep it going. We'll be here every single day from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour on X, on YouTube, on Apple, and Spotify too. Have a wonderful day, guys. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Legendary in the co-host seat. Thanks to Rahim too. Thanks to Funky for joining up on stage. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.